Welcome to HP FanFiction. Support me by subscribing the channel. Also, like and share the video to keep me motivated to make more videos like these. Harry groaned as he walked through the empty halls. Snape did not stop asking questions until he got one wrong, and then proceeded to mock him for his ignorance in front of the class, something that the Slytherin students had found very amusing. The question was about the brewing process of some potion he had never heard of, but he was sure was not part of Hogwarts' curriculum, since even Hermione had her hand down with that one. Teak! What a petty man! He was at least thankful for the complete absence of people in this part of the castle, as he did not want others to see him like this. Control yourself, he admonished himself for his outburst. Harry closed his eyes and focused his mind. All the negative feelings were washed away, like the current of a river, and his calm demeanor returned once more. This was one of the many uses of occlumency. He had to give Snape some credit. It was not that easy to rile him up like this, but the potion professor seemed to have a special talent for it. His piercing green eyes moved around and stopped at an object hanging from the dull stone wall. It was a painting of a woman drinking tea in a peaceful meadow. People would pass by that painting and not think anything about it, but this was not going to fool him. This painting was one of the many that were placed around Hogwarts, with the purpose of spying for the headmaster. This part of the castle was always empty, except for the first day of classes. The corridor ahead of him was the one that led to the underground water cave, where the first-year students arrived with their boats. But there was one more, very important thing in this area. It was something that only 2 people in the castle knew about it. Well, it was 3 people now. Obscuria, a dark cloud of smoke came out of Harry's wand and covered the painting as he walked past it, and as soon as he was out of its sight, the cloud dissipated, leaving no trace. The entity inside the painting would be unable to detect any trace of the dark cloud of anyone who passed by it for the duration of the magic. As this was the purpose of this particular spell, Harry saw an opening to his left. At the end of a short corridor was a closed door that led to the water cave. This door was only opened by a professor when the first years entered the castle, and remained closed for the rest of the year. Ahead of him was a dead end, a short path that ended with a wall and a big painting hanging from said wall. It was a painting of a wooden wall with a stone frame, similar to many of the real doors of the castle. A boring painting for a boring area of the castle. At least that's what most people would think. But Harry knew better. He knew things that only the master of the castle could know. For he has been, albeit for a short period of time, the master of this castle, or at least an alternate version of it. Let's hope this works then. He could not assume that all thighs were the same as he knew, but this was something he had to at least try, for it could bring him great benefits and make the coming war more manageable. Harry walked until he was right in front of the painting, and observed it very carefully. He scanned every inch of it for a few minutes until he was satisfied with his findings. Yes, this should work. He smiled. He took his wand out and started to tap on the painted stones around the wooden door. He taped 10 of the stones in a very specific manner and order before stopping, and then he waited. An empty moment later, on the stones that were tapped, appeared some runes that started to shine brightly with a blue light, and then a click could be heard. Harry placed a hand on the left side of the painting and pulled hard. This one opened in the same way a door would, revealing a descending set of stairs that disappeared into the darkness. Lumos, a strong light appeared on the tip of his wand, and he started to descend the stairs with no hesitation, like he was already very familiar with this procedure. The stairs continued for quite a while, descending further and further down. Followed by them was a narrow corridor that ended into a stone arch. Harry walked past the arch, entering a massive chamber completely covered in darkness. The foundation of Hogwarts. It never ceased to impress me. As his voice echoed through the chamber, a blue magical fire came to life, illuminating the colossal room with an eerie light. The place is already impressive by its size alone. He knew for a fact that this room was almost the size of the entire castle. The floor was made of some fine, polished stone, and there were massive columns all over the place. Those columns were dozens of meters in diameter, and were made of some pure white stone he was never able to identify. Across its surfaces were countless archaic runes from an era long lost, and their height was hard to calculate as they got lost in the darkness, way past the area that was illuminated by the fires. In between some of the columns were stone golems made of the same polished white, marble-like material, and like the column, these golems were covered in the same type of runes. The golems remained stationary in a kneeling position as Harry walked through the chamber. He gave the constructs a passing glance. If someone were to enter this place uninvited, he felt goosebumps just thinking about it. These constructs were not there for decoration, and if an intruder entered the chamber without following the proper procedure, that person would be in for a very painful death. But that was not important right now. The golems were not the reason for this visit. His objective lies further ahead. Harry continued traversing the colossal chamber under the blue light offered by the magical fires until he reached the center. At the very core of the chamber, deep inside the bowels of the castle, was a circular platform, and in the middle of it was a crystal. The crystal was easily 10 times his own size and was shaped like an elongated diamond. It floated a few feet in the air and kept a constant rotation while emitting a pleasant sound. This was the Arkstone of Hogwarts, its very source of power and the biggest magical stone in the whole world. And of course the reason he came to this place. He stepped onto the circular platform, and as soon as he did, the crystal ceased its rotation and remained still while floating in the air. Harry observed the surface of the Arkstone. There were ancient runes carved over its surface. The same type of runes used in the rest of the chamber. He could only guess what the purpose of those runes was. In all his years of studying runes, he had never seen this ancient language. He moved to the other side of the crystal, where a more familiar set of modern runes were carved as well as some words written in Latin. He was very familiar with this part, as here is where Hogwarts wards were created, and later on modified. Near the bottom part of the crystal, he found a set of names. The last one is Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Every headmaster must come to this chamber at least once in their lifetime to carve their name on the Arkstone, tying themselves to the wards in order to control them and use their functions. Harry placed his wand below Dumbledore's spot and started to write with it on the crystal. Harry James Potter. His name shone brightly and he felt an immediate connection to the castle. Harry knew that doing this while Hogwarts already had someone in command of the wards came with some risks. But he was sure that as long as he didn't abuse his authority over the wards, Dumbledore would not notice anything was amiss. That was not a problem. As long as the castle didn't fall under heavy attack, the only privilege he had planned on using was his freedom of apparating inside and outside the castle. It cannot hurt to be ready just in case. Night. The next day was double defense class before lunch, so he was able to meet their new teacher. He entered the class along with some of the Slytherins, and sat down in one of the middle seats next to a blonde girl from the House of Snakes. They exchanged a polite nod before she turned her attention back to her book. This was Daphne Greengrass. He vaguely remembers her from his previous life despite going to the same year and having many classes together. That could only be a good thing considering what house she was from. But the only reason he was paying the girl any attention was because he recalls hearing their family name being mentioned a few times back at home. Could Daphne be friends with my sister, or maybe her little sister? I believe her name was Astoria. Attention class. The voice of their professor was grave and authoritative enough to make even the Slytherins shut up and pay attention. Harry could give the professor a closer look now. His hair was long and black, the same color as his eyes. His skin was dark with a reddish tint to it, and he was built like a soldier, tall and muscular. Most of his body was covered with a dark tunic, but Harry was able to spot several scars on the few uncovered places. His gaze was cold and hard as he looked at his students. Most of the kids sitting in the first row were trembling in fear now. This guy looks like someone who just came out of a battlefield. Why is someone like that teaching at a school? Harry thought. Now, brats. Let's see. Where do we start? He walked to the board. His wand appeared out of nowhere into his hand, and he pointed it forward. A name was carved on the wooden surface with a series of deep cuts. Does he not know how to use a chalkboard? Harry wondered. The words Professor Nair could be made out. My name is Keshav Nair, but you may call me Professor Nair. Hermione raised a hand with some hesitation. Yes? The professor asked. Hermione pointed at the board. Professor, Why, you need to use the sea chalk to write on those. Despite her fear, she could not stand to see a chalkboard being abused in that manner, not even by a professor. Oh, right, it's been a while since I used those things, ha ha ha. What's your name, lass? I mean Miss Hermione Granger, Professor. Well then, have 5 points for Gryffindor, Miss Granger, he said with a scary smile. Does anyone else have a question before we begin? One of the Slytherin boys raised his hand. Yes, Mr. Theodore. Not, Professor. We were wondering, are you perhaps a former Auror or something? He asked while trying his best to look unfazed by the intimidating looks of the professor. An Auror? Hell no. I am a hit wizard, he said with pride. Does anyone know what a hit wizard is? A hit wizard? Yes. That would explain a lot, thought Harry. The professor saw a few hands being raised and chose the blonde girl next to Harry. Go ahead, Miss Daphne Greengrass. Professor, a hit wizard is a mercenary who hunts down dark wizards for money. Good, but incomplete. We hunt down anything with a bounty approved by that country's government. Sometimes is a dark wizard, sometimes is a magical creature causing trouble, and sometimes is a poor fool who made enemies with the wrong person. Professor Naya chuckled, giving the students goosebumps. But you got some part right, so have 2 points for Slytherin. After that the class continued in a more normal manner. Professor Nayar explained the Flipendo jinx, made demonstrations, and then allowed them to do some practice. Harry had to admit that Nayar was one of the most competent defense professors he had seen in this school, maybe on par with that Death Eater disguised as a crazy Auror who taught defense during his 4th year. But this makes me wonder, what is the catch? There is always a catch, Harry pondered. The second day of classes was over, and Harry was once more walking alone through the castle, this time on the 7th floor. The room of requirement would make for the ideal place for practice. He paced back and forth until the door appeared, and once inside he made sure to will the door to disappear. The last thing he needed was a surprise visitor. The place looked mostly empty, except for a few training dummies. This much will do for now. He needed to get used to this new body and magic until it became natural again to cast his spells. With his wand in hand, Harry started to unleash a barrage of spells on the poor dummies. An hour later Harry was panting on the ground, bordering on magical exhaustion. My reserves are so tiny at the moment. I wonder if I should get some artifacts to help. He looked around. This room was also called the Room of Lost and Found Things. He may be able to find something useful here. I had to check that place anyway. There is a chance that Ravenclaw's diadem is still here. Enchanting weapons and creating them was basically his parents' work. What did you say? Someone shouted. Harry was on his way to the Great Hall after taking a refreshing shower, but after turning a corner he stumbled upon a confrontation between a group of Gryffindors and Slytherins. The first ones were Neville, Ron and Seamus, while on the other side was Draco, with his 2 goons. You heard me, Weasley. I called him a squib. Draco pointed at Neville. He couldn't even cast a flipendo. Harry recalled their morning lesson of DADA, and it was true that Neville had been unable to cast anything during the 2 hours of class, despite the professor's attempts to help him. At first Harry had the suspicion that Augusta had forced Neville to use his father's wand, but after getting a closer look, he was able to confirm that Neville did go to Ollivander's and was matched with his former wand. He could recognize that particular Hollywood wand anywhere. He is happy to have left it there for him. That wand was meant for the boy of the prophecy, the one meant to oppose Voldemort. Taking it would have brought a lot of attention from both the Dark Lord and Dumbledore upon himself, and is not like he needs it at this point. His current wand would serve him well, and there would be no chance of producing a priori incantatem if he were to fight Voldemort. In the end he could only reach the conclusion that if Neville's problem did not come from the wand, then it must be a psychological one. He knew for a fact that Neville had the potential to be a powerful wizard, but he had to surpass his sense of inferiority first. While he was pondering on some way to help the boy, Hermione came around the corner and walked angrily to the group of first years. Hey, leave Neville alone. She looked at Draco with a frown. Oh, great. The teacher's pet is here too. Draco rolled his eyes. Neville was hardly the only one who failed to cast the spell. Hermione added, yes. That's what I was about to say. Seamus got interrupted by Hermione, who had yet to finish her argument. Like for example, Seamus, who set the training dummy on fire. Hey, complained Seamus. At least that did some damage. Is a class about defense after all. Harry then noticed that a small girl with short black hair and green robes had stopped next to him, and was watching the argument with an angry expression. Are you going to get involved in this too? He decided to ask. Draco doesn't need my help with those idiots, she huffed before her eyes moved to him, scanning his face and then his robes. What does it matter to you, Gryffindor? Shouldn't you be the one rushing to their help? Come on, Pansy. That's no way to speak to the heir of the Potter house. Be polite. Harry turned his head at the familiar voice and saw Daphne Greengrass right behind them. I am aware of who he is. I'm not an idiot, huffed Pansy. Daphne seemed to enjoy making the other girl angry. She then looked at Harry. Aren't you going to intervene? Thought, she said before moving her eyes to Neville and the others. Their discussion has been heating up and they are now yelling something about a duel. We barely know each other. I'm just someone who is hungry and would like to reach the Great Hall and eat some dinner before I pass out. Harry told her. Oh, I may have just the spell for that. A mischievous smile appeared on the blonde girl's face. Professor McGonagall, how nice to see you in this part of the castle. She spoke in a loud manner for everyone to hear. The arguing group quickly scrambled away, not wanting to get in trouble. Oh, Draco, wait! Pansy hurried to catch up with the retreating blonde boy. Some of the other spectators, who had been congregating in the corridor, gave Daphne a look. My apologies, I could have sworn to have seen the professor right around the corner. She looked very convincing. Or maybe no one felt like arguing anymore because they all started to walk toward the Great Hall. I have cleared the way. You are most welcome, she said to Harry, without looking his way, and then started walking by herself. Harry was left a bit shocked. Did Daphne Greengrass make a prank? He had never got to know the girl during his previous life, but he remembered that people called her names like the Ice Princess or the Slytherin Queen, and had a reputation for being serious and cold to everyone. Now he was left to wonder if this alternate version of her was very different from the other one, or if this was just a playful side of her that most people did not get to know. At the end of the first week of the school year, all the teachers have a meeting to discuss the new students among other things. Well, why don't we start with the most obvious one first? Dumbledore proposed with a kind smile. How is Neville Longbottom adapting to Hogwarts? The professors all looked at each other with complicated expressions. He is trying very hard, I think, commented McGonagall. He seems to have trouble with his wand movements, and his magic in general. Flitwick looked away. He is useless, spat Snape with frustration. He got boils all over his face while trying to brew a simple anti-boils potion. That reaction shouldn't even be possible. The professor raised his hands in the air. Dumbledore sighed. This was not what he was hoping to hear. His eyes moved to the new professor of defense with a tinge of hope. Professor Nayar, what about you? Surely he is at least decent for defense magic. Longbottom? The fat, clumsy one. The big man looked pensive for a moment. I thought he was a squib. I had to question Miss McGonagall about it. He did ask, confirmed the professor. I see. Dumbledore looked a bit distraught. Well, he seems great in herbology. The boy knows his plants and I think he has a natural talent for it, commented Professor Sprout with great enthusiasm. Thank you, Pomona. That is something, I guess. And for the rest of the classes, I am sure there is nothing to worry about. Young Neville must be a bit overwhelmed during his first week of school. Is there any other student worth mentioning? The headmaster asked. Yes, actually, McGonagall perked up. I have a most excellent student in my house. A Muggle-born girl called Hermione Granger, shows great promise in Transfiguration and is very dedicated to her studies. Yes, Granger. She is quite excellent and very hard-working. I was very surprised that she didn't end up in my house, to be honest, remarked Flitwick. A Muggle-born? That's very impressive indeed. Dumbledore seems to recall something then. The Potter's firstborn was also starting this year. Which house did he end up in? He had to admit that his attention during the sorting ceremony had been focused completely on Neville Longbottom, but he should have paid some attention to the other boys, especially the Potter one. The Potters had been some of his most loyal supporters during the beginning of the war. His relationship with them became somewhat strained after the unfortunate death of Sirius Black. He remembers that Lily had blamed the Order for their lack of direct action against Voldemort and his forces, saying that if they had done more, Sirius could have been rescued. But not all is lost. He has managed to maintain casual correspondence with James Potter after the defeat of Voldemort, and he was sure that the Potters would come back to his side once the Dark Lord makes his return. So he should keep at least a casual eye on their son, and make sure he does not fall with the wrong crew. "Yes, he is one of my lions," answered Minerva with pride. The headmaster felt relieved to hear that, but didn't show it. This was the best-case scenario for him. "I'm sure that James will be delighted." He managed to hear Snape mumbling some unpleasant words but decided to ignore them. After all these years, he is still bitter with the other man. Dumbledore can only hope that Severus will not take his frustrations with James's son. Went by. The first weekend had arrived and most of the students had made plans. Groups have formed among the new students. Ron and Seamus had been sticking to Neville like glue, accompanying him everywhere he went and acting very protective when someone else tried to approach and talk to their famous friend. Hermione had talked with Neville a few times, and the tension from the first day had disappeared. But Ron and Seamus were not very fond of her, after she corrected many of their mistakes during classes. So she was mostly kept out of their business. She also didn't seem to get along with the other girls, so Harry would find her often reading alone at the Gryffindor dorm. As for Harry himself, he had no interest in getting close to any of the other children. He loved the fact that he could see many of his former friends alive and happy again, but he had no reason to interact with them at this point. To him they are just little children, and he finds the idea of dealings with them and talking about toys and Quidditch just extremely boring. He rather spends his free time by himself, doing something useful like training. Gladius. 2 swords were conjured in front of him before he banished them towards 2 different targets, one to his left and the other to his right. One of the blades impacted the dummy dead center and sent it tumbling backward. The other blade missed the target by a few inches and embedded itself in the wall. Harry looked at this with disappointment. This was one of his best combat tricks, a basic combination of conjunction and the banishing charm. It was a simple but effective way to deal with multiple enemies. I used to be able to conjure dozens of those, and send them out with pinpoint accuracy. He knew that he had a long way to go before he could reach his previous level of strength. It's not that he lacked patience, as he understood that his body was very young and his magic was still developing. The problem was his lack of intel on Voldemort's location and his future plans. The uncertainty was making him very anxious. He could attack at any moment and he was not ready yet. He tried to walk and almost fell down. He felt tired, very tired. He has been pushing himself every day to his limit. That's enough for today. Let's go back and take a shower. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was late, almost curfew. Shit, I missed dinner. His stomach complained in response. Shut up, you can have double breakfast tomorrow. Harry picked up his things and hurried back to the dorms, not expecting to find anyone out at this hour. So it came as a surprise when Hermione came running to him as soon as he opened the painting to enter. "Harry, thank God you are here. I need your help," she said with urgency. "What's the emergency?" "It's Neville. He got into another argument with Draco Malfoy and challenged him to a duel." Neville challenged Draco to a duel? A duel of magic? Harry looked at her with a dubious expression. Well, technically it was Ron the one who suggested they have a duel. But that's not important. We have to stop them. She looked desperate. "Why? And what do you mean by we?" He felt too tired to deal with this. "Because they are going to be breaking so many rules with this duel. And they could also be hurt, or expelled," Harry added. Hermione gasped at hearing the word. "They could?" she asked with dread in her voice. "I was just joking, Hermione. They will be fine. They'll get a detention at most. Let them duel if that's how they want to spend their time." But, Hermione looked like she was about to cry. "If you don't help me, who will?" she said with misty eyes. "Oh, come on." He sighed. "Fine. I'll help you stop this duel, don't cry." Harry can't understand why she cares so much about Neville, but he can't stand to see her sad. The girl had been like a sister to him. even if this wasn't the same Hermione he knew. "You'll help me?" she smiled. "So, when is this duel?" He said the last word with reluctance. "Tonight at midnight, in the room of trophies," answered the girl. He wanted to roll his eyes. Yes, that's the best place for a duel, lots of glass and irreplaceable awards everywhere. I also thought it was a strange choice. It was Malfoy the one who suggested it, and Ron quickly agreed. "I doubt he is planning on showing, but fine." He looked at the clock. It was 9 o'clock, and the curfew had just started. "I'll see you here in 2.5 hours. I need a shower and some rest." It was then that she noticed his current state. "What have you been doing until this late? You are covered in sweat and you missed dinner." Harry walked away from her. Too tired to answer. "I need a nap." She huffed in annoyance but said nothing.
Enchanting weapons and creating them was basically his parents' work.
"What are you two doing here?" Ron pointed at Hermione and Harry, who were standing in front of the trophy room floor when they arrived. "Did you come here to stop the duel?" asked Neville. "Yes, you need to stop this and come back to the common room before we all get caught and punished for being out after curfew. That's against the rules, you know," answered Hermione. "We know is against the rules." "Shut up," shouted Ron. "You may want to lower your voice," said Harry. "We are not supposed to be here, you know," he added. This seemed to upset both Ron and Hermione. Hermione wanted to stop them before they left the dorms at first, but Harry had convinced her to wait here instead, claiming that nothing she would say could convince them not to come, but seemed that nothing she could say would convince them to go back either. So Harry was basically stuck as a babysitter at this point. "We will go back after we teach Malfoy a lesson," Seamus exclaimed. "You really think he is going to show up?" Harry decided to speak up. If Malfoy truly wanted to duel Neville, why did he choose to do it at midnight in a place where no one would see it? If he wanted to humiliate him, he would have chosen a time and place where plenty of people would be there to witness it. Doesn't he seem like the type who would do that? "That's true, Malfoy is very arrogant and always insults us when there are other students around to hear him," admitted Neville. "But why would he make us come here then? Now we can tell everyone that he is a coward who never show up to the duel," said Ron with a smirk. "To get you in detention," the girl's voice came from behind. They all turned to get a look at the one who spoke and saw two girls approaching. One of them was a girl with long brown hair who was looking around, clearly not very comfortable being there. The other one was a blonde girl with striking blue eyes, who walked with confidence and looked at them directly and with no hesitation. Ron saw their green robes and frowned. "What are you doing here, snakes? Where is Malfoy? How dare you? We even came here to help." The brown-haired girl exploded with anger. "Stop, Tracy. Let me do the talking." Daphne glared calmly at the group. Her eyes stopped at Harry for a good second before moving to Neville. "We overheard a conversation between Malfoy and some Slytherin boys. He was bragging about how he tricked you into breaking the curfew, and how he gave Argus Filch a note, saying that some Gryffindor students were planning on sneaking in the trophy room at midnight for some prank," she explained. "So this was a trap then," realized Neville. "Why should we believe you? You could be working with Malfoy." Seamus looked at Daphne. "I told you, we shouldn't have bothered with them. Let's go back." Tracy pulled from her friend's robes. "Look, we took a risk to come here to warn you, but if you refuse to believe my words, so be it." She turned around and started to walk away with Tracy quickly following. "You can't go back that way. Filch is there already." Harry's warning was just loud enough for everyone to hear. "What are you saying now?" Tracy glared at Harry with a frown. "Oh no, let's go the other way," Daphne said with urgency. Tracy was going to question the reason for her decision, but that was not necessary, when they heard a loud hiss. "That's Filch's cat," Ron shouted. They had several unpleasant encounters with the janitor and his mangy cat during the week, so it was easy for Ron to recognize the creature. Whenever that cat went, the man was only a few feet behind. "Run!" cried Seamus, and the trio of boys started to run in the opposite direction to where the cat was. Neville gave Harry and Hermione a quick glance and spoke a "come on" to the two of them. Hermione did not move. She had gone completely pale and was staring at the cat. Harry knew her well enough to know that she was probably thinking about all the trouble they were going to get in for this. The detentions, the permanent record, the loss of points. There was no time to argue with the girl, so he took her hand and started to drag her away while Daphne and Tracy followed behind. When they turned the next corner to the right, there was no more trace of Neville, Ron and Seamus. "Those chubby boys can run surprisingly fast," Daphne commented. "Where are they? Miss Norris?" The unpleasant voice of the janitor could be heard getting closer, and his steps started to get faster. Hermione's grip on his hand got a lot stronger. "We are going to be expelled," she whispered. Harry scanned the corridor ahead. There were a few doors, but none of those were classrooms. Not that they could hide there either unless they forced their way in. He pulled Hermione a bit faster. The girl was too worried to pay attention to their surroundings, and just let herself be dragged along by Harry. Daphne gave him a few looks, probably wondering what he was looking for. Harry then found the room he had been looking for, and stopped at the entrance. "What are you doing?" "Keep running," said Tracy. "All the classrooms are closed at night, and I don't think this is even a classroom." Daphne looked at the door. It was much smaller than the classroom doors she had seen so far, but she was still very unfamiliar with the castle. Harry placed his hand on the handle and it immediately unlocked with a soft click. After inscribing his name on the arkstone with the other headmasters of the school, as far as Hogwarts was concerned, Harry had the full authority of the castle master and could enter any room he wanted at any time of the day. There was no door in the castle he could not open. He unlocked the door and hushed the others inside before closing it back again. "Keep quiet," he whispered, and the girls nodded. They all waited in silence as Filch walked past the door, and they got tensed when they heard him stop. "What is it, Miss Norris? Where are they?" They waited a bit more but could not hear any more steps, which could only mean he was standing still, looking for them. "No, Miss Norris, they cannot be here. These rooms are sealed. No students could open them. Let's go. They must have run very fast. We have to catch them." The hurried steps of Filch started to sound far away and they could breathe in relief. "We are safe." "Wow, that was close," said Tracy. "Yes. My dad would kill me if I got detention on the first week," Daphne added. Hermione seemed to be recovering from her panic attack from earlier but still said nothing. They glanced around the room. "This is clearly not a classroom," commented Tracy. The room was a lot smaller than a classroom, was tastefully decorated, and filled with accommodations like several leather couches, coffee tables, and elegant chairs. "I didn't know Hogwarts had rooms like these. This looks like a waiting room for guests. We have something like this in my family manor," said Daphne. Hogwarts used to host parties and reunions between noble houses in the past. They must have used rooms like this one back then. They all turned to look at Hermione. She shied away from the attention but continued. "It's in Hogwarts, A History, Volume 1. Say, Potter, how did you open the door? It was clearly locked," Daphne asked. "My father and his friends spent many years uncovering the secrets of this castle, and he then shared some of that knowledge with me. It was the only explanation he could come up with that didn't mention time travel or dimensional jumping." He walked to the nearby fireplace and pushed on one of the bricks. The back part of the fireplace opened, revealing a dark corridor behind. "That will lead you to the dungeons. I trust you know how to use the Lumos charm." The three girls looked at him with shocked expressions. "If you have questions, leave them for another occasion. We need to be back at our common rooms before Filch can warn our house heads." Daphne and Tracy looked at each other and noted. "Very well, Potter. We can talk on a different day." She pulled her wand and softly said Lumos. The tip of the wand became bright like a light bulb. She did not hesitate to enter the hole in the fireplace and disappeared with her friend following behind. Once they were gone, the entrance closed by itself. "Let's go back. It should be safe now." Harry gave Hermione a look. "Do I need to hold your hand again?" he asked. Hermione became a bit embarrassed. "I'm fine now," she huffed. They left the room and walked at a brisk pace without talking. And just a few minutes later they reached the painting of the fat lady that covered the entrance to the Gryffindor common room. "Oh no, she is sleeping." Hermione pointed at the fat lady. She was lying comfortably on a big couch and snoring. Harry could have just opened the painting without the guardian permission, but that would have been too harder to explain compared to opening a normal door. He instead tapped on the painting with his wand. "She is going to be mad," Hermione whispered with worry. "Wake up already and let us in," Harry demanded. The lady opened her eyes and looked at them with a very displeased expression. Is well past curfew. Where were the two of you? We lost track of time while snogging in a broom closet. The password is Lion's Pride. Now open up. The fat lady looked outraged, and Hermione became red as a tomato. I never. Half. Children these days. I can't believe this. The big woman started to complain but opened up the entrance anyway. Harry went inside followed by an embarrassed Hermione. Harry, why did you say that? Hermione slapped his shoulder. Did you want me to tell the truth? Besides, who cares if she judges us? This is just a painting. Harry shrugged. Fine, I'll never ask you for help again, she shouted before storming up the stairs. If only that was true, I'm so tired. Harry let out a yawn and went to his bed. The Room of Lost Things, also known as the Room of Requirement, or the Room of Come and Go, was a place that has been used by Hogwarts house elves for almost a millennia. Harry passed by a shelf filled with all sorts of items and placed with no obvious order whatsoever. He could glimpse books, magazines, individual shoes, underwear, broken toys, an empty bottle of shampoo, and a very ominous potion vial with some pitch-black liquid inside. Apparently the elves have been using this room to store all the garbage left behind by former students and teachers for the last 9 centuries. Harry spat his complaints as he walked. He had come here, not just to find Ravenclaw's diadem, but to also find a few items he could sell. After his first week of training, Harry had come to realize something. His best chance to regain his old form in a reasonable time frame was to make use of magical rituals and artifacts. His goal was to do more than just reach his previous peak. He wanted to surpass his old level of power and reach new heights, so he could be prepared for any eventuality that his enemies could come up with. During his previous life, by the time he had acquired much of his knowledge about rituals and magical artifacts, the world was very much in ruins. Demons' first targets had been the magical communities like Diagon Alley, so resources became very scarce, and finding the rare ingredients necessary for these rituals was impossible. I won't let that happen again. He clenched his fists. Lucky for him, this world was still intact, and filled with all the resources he could possibly need. Resources he planned to use, but for that he will need large sums of money. I can't sell any of this trash. He looked around the shelves. By the look of things, the elves refused to throw anything away, storing everything left behind with no exceptions. Of course, most of the things that people left or forgot ended up being trash, meant to be disposed of. But the elves do not have the same standard as humans for what constitutes trash, so they stored everything. They are like tiny magical hoarders. But I am sure there has to be. Wait, what is that? His eyes were drawn to a broom resting against one of the busy shelves. At first glance it looked like an ordinary broom, but someone who was knowledgeable about flying brooms could recognize the very particular construction of the broom was consistent with a specific brand. That's definitely a Nimbus, and a very old model at that. He picked it up to get a closer look and read the letters engraved on the wood. A Nimbus 100. That's one of the first models ever produced. This is a collector's item. This finding gave him an idea. This place was full of old things that could be valuable as collector items nowadays, like old brooms, books, or even vintage clothes. It's going to take a while to sort through all this stuff, but I should be able to make enough money by selling antique items from here. And if that is not enough, I have other ideas. For a moment he wished to have the help of a house elf, as it would make things so much simpler, but he could not possibly use his family elf, as this one would report everything to his parents. All right. Let's leave that for now and get on with the other reason for my visit. He lifted his wand and focused his mind on the object he wanted. Accio Ravenclaw's diadem. He waited, hoping to hear some noises as they came towards him, but nothing happened. Harry frowned but was not ready to give up just yet. Accio Horcrux. Exion Voldemort Horcrux. Accio Rowena Ravenclaw. Belongings. Accio Tom Marvolo Riddle. Belongings. Nothing. This was the worst-case scenario and another evidence that despite its many similarities, this was a very different world. This is very bad. Maybe he stored them in different locations. Maybe he didn't even create the Horcruxes in the first place, and there is no way for me to know. There are other ways to protect one's life after all. He could only hope that Voldemort did not resort to demonology this time. I should still check the other places I know, just to be sure. If he has created Horcruxes, there is a good chance that one of them is in his old mansion. But with him still alive, that house will be much better protected. It would be a suicide to go right now. Harry thought hard for a while, but the possibilities were just too many and his information was lacking. One wrong move could be the end of his journey. For what little he knew, Death Eaters had not made any moves for years, until that attack on Diagon Alley. Hopefully they will take it slow for a while. He could only hope for that at least. Even if he gathered all the necessary ingredients, it would not be possible to perform any rituals on himself. At this point his body and magic were growing, and were very unstable. A ritual would do more harm than good. He is going to need to wait for at least 2 more years before starting. By then he will have enough control to complete everything safely. But I can't just wait and do nothing. I can think of a way to start acquiring some important information. He looked around the room of requirements with a thoughtful expression, and this room may have what I need. On Monday afternoon, the first-year students were having their first flying lesson. All of them were standing next to their broom, as structured by Rolanda Hooch, the flying instructor of Hogwarts. Keep yourselves focused on the broom next to you and say, "Up," loud and with conviction. The broom will listen to your magic and follow your commands. Everyone started to yell at the same time over and over. This is going to give me a headache. Harry covered his ears. He then took a glance at the broom he had been given for the class. It was a Clean Sweeper 260, one of the cheapest brooms in the market, from 20 years ago, and it was in poor condition. Is the school budget in such dire straits already? Mr. Potter, is there something wrong? It looked like Professor Hooch had noticed that Harry was the only one in the class who wasn't even trying to lift the broom, so she decided to approach him. No, Professor, my apologies. I was merely a bit distracted. Then let's better focus on the matter at hand. Go on, give it a try, Mr. Potter, she urged him. Being left with no choice but to participate in the class, Harry opened his hand to will the broom up, and this one instantly flew into his grasp. What an impressive display! You may have your father's talents for flying after all, Mr. Potter. The professor smiled at him. Ops, I forgot to say the magical words. He realized. Miss Hooch looked at him like there was something she wanted to ask, but was hesitant to do so, but her attention went quickly somewhere else. When Neville Longbottom started to scream. Ah, help! Neville was holding onto his broom while this one ascended into the sky. Mr. Longbottom, what are you doing? Get down this instant. I still haven't explained how to control the brooms in the air, Professor Hooch shouted at him. Excuse me, Professor, but I don't think Neville is doing it on purpose. Hermione looked at Neville with worried eyes. The Gryffindor students looked at him with uneasiness, while many of the Slytherin, and especially Draco, seemed to be having a great time laughing and pointing at Neville. Harry knew that he had to do something, so he carefully pulled his wand out and covered it with his sleeves. The last time this happened, Neville got away with a fractured wrist, but there was no guarantee that it would be exactly the same this time around. What if Neville falls a bit differently and ends up breaking his neck? He could not take that risk. Neville's broom kept going higher and higher, and people getting more worried now. Then all of a sudden, his broom started to shake and collided with the walls of the castle, making him lose his grip and precipitate straight down. Oh no! Professor Hooch struggled to get her wand out of her tunic while the students gasped and yelled in horror as Neville fell. Harry took the chance to cast a bouncing charm on the area below the falling boy. Many of the students covered their eyes or looked away when Neville was about to hit the ground, not wanting to be a witness to a macabre spectacle. The ones still looking became shocked when they saw the ground deform like it was made of gelatine. When Neville landed on it, unfortunately for him, after the second bounce he landed outside the charmed area. Ouch! Neville cried in pain. Miss Hooch was the first one to reach his side. Let me see, Mr. Longbottom. She examined him up and down. It doesn't look like you have anything broken, but let's take you to Madame Pomfrey for a checkup. You had a nasty fall. Her eyes went up to the place he had fallen from. It was close to one of the roofs where the gargoyles were located, at least 20 meters high. A very nasty fall, she repeated. As she helped the boy walk, Miss Hooch turned to look at the rest of the class. While I'm taking Miss Longbottom to the infirmary, I want no one touching the brooms. Is that understood? Yes, Miss Hooch, the students answered. Did you see that? Who cast that spell? Wasn't it the teacher? I didn't see her do any magic. She was struggling to get her wand out when he was falling. The students started to talk among themselves. What a bloody idiot. He can't do anything right. Draco commented before he and his friends started to laugh. Is not funny. He could have died, shouted Hermione at Malfoy. Yeah, shut up, Malfoy. That's right, added Ron and Seamus. Harry ignored their banter and went to the place where Neville's broom had fallen. It was still in one piece, much to his surprise. Let's see. He picked it up and examined it. It was the same model as the one given to him, a clear sweeper 260, but this one was in even worse shape. Harry took a closer look at the runes of the broom. He was by no means an expert in flying brooms, but he had advanced knowledge of runes at least. He was quickly able to tell that this broom had no chance of flying correctly, as many of the runes that form part of the control section were damaged. The reaction of the broom and his fall were a lot more violent than the one I remember. Could someone have tampered with the flying broom? Or maybe he just had worse luck. The possibility seemed ridiculous at first. But this was the boy who lived we were talking about. Was someone trying to kill him, perhaps? During the next week, many rumors started to circulate about what happened to Neville. Students wondered who cast the magic that saved his life. The professor was quick to admit that it wasn't her and that she should have been more prepared for that kind of scenario. From the students, no one had come forward to claim the glory of saving Neville Longbottom's life. Then someone came out with a different theory. What if Neville himself was the one who cast the spell, but he did it unconsciously? Students have been very open about their disappointment with Neville Longbottom, and his magical prowess or his lack of it. But this rumor gave birth to a new possibility. What if Neville really held some incredible power inside him but he was unable to control said power? That would explain how he defeated Voldemort when he was a mere babe. He did it unconsciously. During a moment of life and death, he invoked this mystical power and defeated the Dark Lord, and now he did it again, in order to save his life. As the days passed, this rumor became more solid and people added more details, like maybe Neville had inherited his magic from Merlin himself, but as a child he is unable to control said magic, so it will only come to be during extreme situations. The students started to look at Neville with more respect, and even Malfoy stopped mocking him at all times by suggesting he was a squib who only got the Hogwarts letter because the owl got confused. One more week passed after that and things finally started to calm down. Harry's last class of Friday had been potions, with the Slytherins. A very tiresome way to end the week. Snape had relaxed a bit with him, and did not bombard him with questions. Too much, but he was still quite antagonistic and would not pass any small mistake that Harry made. As he was almost done packing his stuff, a small piece of paper landed next to his hand. He carefully picked it up, looked at what was written on the paper, and left the classroom without showing any external changes in his expression. That night, after finishing his daily training routine, instead of going back to the dorms, he took a different route. One that was taking him past the trophy room and around the corner, to the room he used to hide from the janitor on his first week. Daphne Greengrass was waiting for him in front of the door. "Shall we?" She pointed at the door. He placed his hand on the handle, and the door unlocked. The both of them entered and he closed the door again. The candles inside the room lit by themselves, creating a comfortable atmosphere. "Why did you ask me to come here?" he asked. The note he received that afternoon told him about some important matter she had to discuss with him. "This is a very safe room. I did some research after the day we hid here. Those old rooms are always locked, no matter the day or hours, since no one uses them. Only a teacher or the headmaster has the authority to unlock the door and enter." She left hanging the obvious fact that Harry had unlocked the door twice already, despite being neither a teacher nor the headmaster. But she did not question him how he accomplished that. Daphne walked around for a bit before choosing a comfortable leather couch to sit down. For an abandoned room, it is spotted clean. Harry sat down in front of her. "The elves clean every room in the castle, even the ones that no one uses. We have less than an hour before curfew and I rather not get detention. Can we get to the point?" Yes, I'm sorry. I have been meaning to talk to you earlier, but you are really hard to find once the classes are over. I am usually busy. That was all the explanation he was going to offer her for now. She nodded and did not press further on that. I will get to the point then. I want to propose an alliance between House Potter and House Greengrass. Harry raised an eyebrow. Did you seriously call me here at this hour to talk about politics? He found the situation ridiculous. The girl was just 11. What could she possibly know about family alliances or their political positions? If Daphne was angry or disappointed, she did not show it on her face. Instead, she continued the talk. What do you know about the current situation of the pure-blood families in Britain? Situation of the pure-blood families? You mean the whole war with Voldemort? She flinched slightly at the mention of the name. Yes, the conflict with the Dark Lord. At the beginning of it, some families declared themselves on his side like the Malfoys or the Lestrange, while others fought directly against him like the Longbottoms or the Potters. And a third faction was formed by default, a faction composed of families who decided to stay clear of the conflict and remain neutral, like my family, the Greengrass. Harry nodded. He now understood where she was going with all of this. During the war, the Dark faction was too busy to pressure my father into joining them. But then the Dark Lord was defeated, but not killed, Harry added. Yes, everyone knows that he is coming back. The Dark faction has been preparing for his return, which they expect happen in the next few years. And when he does come back, neutrality will no longer be an option. The Malfoys, Avery and Yaxley have been pressuring my father to side with them. By pressuring him, you mean threatening him. So what exactly that your family want? Harry decided to ask. We need allies who are willing to stand up against the Dark Lord and those who support him. Neutrality is not an option anymore, and the Dark faction's offers for alliance will become worse as time passes, and his return gets closer, Daphne explained. But their offers must already be quite bad since you are looking for alliances on the opposite side, added Harry. Daphne's expression darkened, as she seemed to be remembering something. Lord Malfoy and Lord Avery made the same proposal, a position as a mistress for myself, while Lord Yaxley wanted me as his son's wife, but only if my sister joined in as the mistress. Harry was surprised to hear her say those things in such a nonchalant way. He never learned much about the workings of the pure-blood families, and no one among his friends or mentors could teach him either, except for Neville. But the boy was not exactly fond of the pure-blood customs and etiquette. But this girl in front of him was different. Daphne has been raised by a pure-blood lord and educated to become his successor. A normal 11-year-old girl would not be talking about alliances and marriages in such a manner. We were also warned that if we waited for too long to answer, the only offer we would get would be from lower dark families like Crabble, Goyle or Selwyn, and they may not even be for a marriage. She added, How can you be so calm while talking about becoming someone's mistress? You are bloody 11. Do you even understand what that entails? Daphne looked offended at this. I am the heir of a pure-blood family, of course. I would know about these things and what they entail. My parents have been preparing me to be the next lady since I was 6 years old, and I'm sure you have also been taught these things the same way. He considered for a second, but it seemed unlikely that his father had done that. He had no memories of the previous owner of this body, but he seemed to hate his parents with fervor and would not have listened to any lessons from them. Maybe they have taught some of this to Lyra, but I doubt they will arrange any marriage for her. Our mother would never allow it anyway. He just knew a few things about pure blood etiquette and costumes. It was no more than a side effect of spending so many years chasing down Death Eaters. I know some things, but I don't think my family will arrange marriage contracts for me or my sisters. Daphne looked genuinely surprised for the first time since they entered the room. How else can you create a proper alliance, one that is strong enough to be trustworthy without a bond of blood? Harry then realized something. Wait then. When you first mentioned making an alliance between our families, you were talking about writing a marriage contract for us. Daphne nodded. When I came to Hogwarts, the idea was to approach Longbottom and start negotiations. After all, they are a very ancient pure-blood family. And Neville Longbottom is And why didn't you? He could already imagine why, though. Well, the Longbottom heir is not what I was expecting. Then I meet you. You are a lot more capable, and the Potters are one of the most influential families of the light side at the moment. This girl only sees marriage as a tool to improve her family situation, tossing away any emotional part, Harry thought. So you would marry me or Neville because it would be good for your family as a whole. Is that it? He was getting annoyed with this conversation. Daphne looked to be fighting hard the need to roll her eyes at his stupid question. Well, obviously, consult your father about the offer and try to give me an answer during the next week if possible. Our father could also arrange a meeting to finish the details. She was talking about it like it was a business transaction, and it was making Harry very uncomfortable. And you would be okay with that? You would marry a guy that you know nothing about because it could be beneficial for your family. That is how pure blood families work. It has always been like that, is the tradition. And my father cares for me, and my sister. He would never agree to marry me off to someone who would treat us badly. That is one of the reasons he never accepted any contracts so far. Harry sighed. The standards and priorities for old pure blood families was something he could never agree with. But he knew it was going to be pointless to argue with her about it. She had been learning these things since she was 6 years old. For her, this was just how the world worked and there was nothing wrong with it. However, completely rejecting the offer for an alliance would be unwise. At this moment, the one thing he was lacking the most was information about what Voldemort and the Dark families were doing. Maybe the Greengrass could use their unique position as a neutral family to collect some. The problem was that he could not make an alliance like this by himself. He was not the lord of his house, not even close. Lord Greengrass will not even consider signing a magical contract with a child. He will want to speak with his father. Well, there may be another issue, but I will have to deal with that later. He looked at Daphne, who had been observing him carefully. Why don't we arrange a meeting between our families for the Christmas break? We can discuss things further then. There is not much I can do when it comes to making decisions about alliances and that kind of stuff without my father present, I believe. Daphne seemed satisfied with his answer as a small smile appeared on her face. Of course, and is the same for me. I will send a letter to my father tomorrow, informing him of what we talked about, and then we can talk further about arranging a meeting. Agreed. Harry nodded. It seemed like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders now, and Harry noticed how Daphne had loosened up a bit now. Okay, so do you mind opening that passage from the last time? It was very handy. She sounded more cheerful. Sure. He walked to the fireplace and opened the secret entrance. You sound more natural now. Yes, that was my business persona. Now that our business has concluded, at least for now, I can relax a bit. She pulled out her wand and cast a lumos. See you, Potter, and remember, we must not be seen talking in public. Good night, Greengrass. There was 1 week left before Halloween, and Gryffindor was about to play their second game of the year after their defeat against Ravenclaw. Harry felt a bit strange sitting in the audience box, but there was nothing he could do about it. Looking around the stadium, he was hit by a wave of nostalgia, remembering the many years that he played on that field, chasing the snitch for Gryffindor. I hope they do better this time. Of course they will. I heard that they got a new Seek this time. Harry overheard the conversation that Ron and Seamus were having on the seats right in front of him. A new Seeker, what a coincidence. Or maybe it was something else. His eyes moved towards the teacher's box where the headmaster was smiling like usual while Deputy Headmistress McGonagall looked around the field with worried eyes. Say, Hermione, he called to the girl sitting to his right. She lifted her face from the book she was reading, an old tome called Quidditch Ruling 1890. Yes, where is Neville? I know he is not very interested in Quidditch, but he is usually with those two, he said while pointing forward at Ron and Seamus. Now that you mention it is strange. She looked around the box but could not spot, and it was very unusual to not see that trio together. They had been inseparable since the year started. Seamus, Ron, do you know where Neville is? She decided to ask. He left the dorm very early this morning and I haven't seen him since. I have no clue where he could have gone. Seamus looked genuinely confused. I don't know anything, Ron answered abruptly and turned around to not look at them. He is a terrible liar, Hermione whispered into Harry's ear. He had to agree that even as an adult Ron had always been bad at lying. He definitely knew where Neville was. Harry already had a hunch of what was going on, and he would only need to wait a bit longer to confirm it. Welcome to the fourth game of the Hogwarts 1991 League. The cheerful voice of the commentator could be heard resounding all over the stadium thanks to the masterful work of magical runes on the place. I am Lee Jordan and I will be your commentator. The students started to clap and cheer. This will be Gryffindor's second game, after their defeat against Ravenclaw. But they have come back with a secret weapon, a mysterious new seeker, whose name they have refused to reveal. Jordan gave McGonagall a side glance. Their opponents this time is the Slytherin team, the champions from last year, and a few years before that one, but who is counting? Jordan. McGonagall gave him a warning glare. Right, let's get started then. First to jump into the field will be Slytherin. The green-robed team came flying into the stadium. Their own selection of the spectator boxes started to cheer while the rest remained silent. The Slytherin team was, by far the least liked one of the four, mostly due to their rough play and borderline illegal tactics. And now, the team we are all hoping will take the win today. Jordan. This time a stronger warning came from the lips of the deputy headmistress. But not me, I am completely impartial. Go Gryffindor, shouted Jordan. The players made their entrance one by one. There they are. First is no other than the captain himself, Oliver Wood, who plays as the keeper. Next we have the two beaters, the Weasley twins, George and Fred, and following them are our lovely trio of chasers, Angelina Johnson, Katie Bell and Alicia Spinnet. Jordan moved forward in his seat to get a better look now. And finally, flying a bit too far behind from the others, is the new seeker, who is no other than Neville Longbottom. The stadium got very loud as everyone started talking loudly at the same time. What? Hermione shouted and almost dropped her book. Yay! Go Neville! Ron fisted the air. You knew about this. Seamus stared at Neville in shock. I caught him doing practice the other day. Sorry I didn't tell you. They made me promise to keep the secret, explained Ron. How did he join the team? First years are not even allowed to have a broom, asked Seamus. Ron shrugged. He told me that Professor McGonagall had asked him to join the team. What were they thinking? After what happened to him during fling practice, he must be so scared right now. Look, his broom is shaking a lot. Hermione pointed up. Harry stared at the broom that Neville was riding. It was a very familiar one. He is using a Nimbus 2000. Really? That's the fastest broom in the market. Ron turned around to look at Harry. You can see it from here? Seamus questioned. Dorothy, well, that was quite the surprise. The commentator spoke again. Gryffindor has no other but the boy who lived, the hero of magical Britain, as their seeker. The Gryffindor box erupted into cheers. Now players, get to your positions, Jordan instructed. Professor Hooch walked to the center of the field and pulled her wand out. Neville, come over here, called Oliver from his place next to metal rings. Stay flying high until you see the snitch. Remember the training. I know. Neville flew slowly upwards, gripping the broom with all his force. Say Ron, Neville got better at flying since that day, right? Asked Seamus with some doubts after seeing his display. I haven't really seen him fly yet, but I'm sure he has. Besides, he has a brand new top-of-the-line flying broom. Even my little sister could catch the snitch with that broom, Ron exclaimed loudly. Your sister is a much better flyer than you, Harry thought. Ready? Professor Hooch lifted her wand in the air, and a ball of light shot out. Game start. The players immediately got busy. Angelina, Katie and Alicia went to intercept the quaffle while the Weasley twins protected them from Slytherin beaters. Oliver Wood watched with rapt attention, not losing sight of any detail. Both seekers were flying higher than the other player, overseeing the entire stadium. Oi Longbottom! The Slytherin seeker approached Neville and looked at him with a nasty smirk. Neville looked forward at the other boy and started to shake a little. The Slytherin seeker was a much older boy than himself. He figured that he was at least a fifth year. What do you want? Not much. Just wanted to ask if you were okay there. You were looking a bit shaky. Neville stared dubiously at the older boy. He was fairly sure that the Slytherin seeker was just trying to mock him in some way. The Slytherin boy realized this and raised his hands defensively. Hey, come on! I'm just trying to be a good sport here. I'm okay, he said hesitantly. I just don't like heights very much. Not since my uncle threw me off the third floor of the house in an effort to awaken my magic. I see, then let me give you a few tips. He rose one finger up. Number 1, test your broom before every game. Neville nodded while listening. Number 2, charming your uniform pants with a cushioning charm is a game changer. And number 3, a smirk appeared on his face. Always keep an eye on the enemy beaters. Neville, move. The desperate shout from Oliver reached Neville's ears, but he didn't understand what was happening or where he was supposed to move. It was then that Neville saw the Slytherin seeker quickly flying to one side just as a bludger flew past him and hit Neville on the chest, making him fall backward. Oh no! Harry heard Hermione as she rose from her seat. He is going to fall! Lavender was sitting on his left, covering her face. Neville managed to barely hold on and was now hanging with only his fingers touching the flying broom while this one remained floating in the air. Oh boy! Gryffindor's seeker has been hit by a bludger and is barely hanging from his broom. This does not look good. Lee Jordan did his best to keep his commentary while everyone stared at Neville. Do something! Albus, shouted McGonagall. Dumbledore nodded before standing up with his wand already in hand. The other Gryffindor player had already abandoned their position and rushed to help their teammate, but before anyone could get close enough, Neville lost his grip and fell while giving a blood-curdling scream. The headmaster pointed his wand at Neville and started to cast a feather fall charm when he noticed a large amount of magic concentrating right beneath the boy. What is that? He looked at the events with great curiosity. A strong gust of wind came out of nowhere and slowed Neville's fall until he was almost floating in the air. The wind then got progressively weaker and disappeared completely, when he was only a few feet off the grassy field. Harry watched the scene from the box and breathed in relief while storing his wand back. This is the second time that boy needs to stay away from brooms. He is safe, Hermione cried. Bloody hell, that was close, shouted Ron. Did you see that? It's like what happened that day during flying practice. Told Lavender to her friend, but loud enough for everyone in the box to hear. Are you talking about the rumors of him awakening some ancient magic? Asked Parvati, even though she was one of the main culprits for spreading that rumor. They were just doing it for fun and never considered there could be some truth to it. The game was stopped after that while they gave Neville a medical checkup. 30 minutes passed after that and the students were starting to get anxious. What is taking so long? Could Neville be seriously hurt? Asked Hermione. I'm sure he is fine. He barely fell 2 feet after the wind stopped. But I would be seriously surprised if Neville is still willing to ride a flying broom anytime soon after this, answered Harry. In the end he was right. Professor Hooch came back into the stadium 10 minutes later to announce the end of the match. Gryffindor Seeker had refused to play again after the incident and the team had not prepared a replacement for him. So with the lack of one player, they were forced to forfeit the game, giving Slytherin the win. Enchanting weapons and creating them was basically his parents' work. The next day, headmaster's office, Albus Dumbledore was sitting on his chair, and looking very uncomfortable towards his visitor. Augusta Longbottom looked like she was ready to jump over the table and smash the old wizard's head with one of the many objects decorating his desk. 1 month. Albus. He's only been here 1 month and is already injured. Augusta spat with rage. Augusta, you know that magical schools have some risks. Don't give me that. Don't think for a moment that I don't know about the previous incident that occurred in his first week. The old witch could not have her eyes narrowed any further. It was just an accident. Augusta, Quidditch can be a bit dangerous sometimes. Minerva, who was the third and last occupant of the office at the moment, decided to help the headmaster a little bit. Oh, I'm not blaming that other boy for his trickery, Minerva. I'm blaming whoever thought that putting my grandson on that broom and having him play a Quidditch match was a good idea. Her eyes moved from Minerva to Dumbledore. Which one of you made that decision? I made the suggestion, spoke the headmaster. I thought it would help young Neville with his confidence issues. After he almost broke his neck on his first flying class, you thought that would give him more confidence. And since when is that your job? I am her grandmother. You are supposed to educate him. Nothing more, Augusta shouted. I can assure you that we just want the best for your grandson. Minerva tried to placate the angry woman. He has already left the team. He won't be playing again. Of course he won't. I would not have allowed such a thing to happen again. The old witch looked at Dumbledore. I hope this is the last time I have to visit my grandson in the infirmary, Albus. I have you know that there are other options for education. Besides Hogwarts. The headmaster's expression changed a bit at this. That won't be necessary. There is no other place where he is safer than in Hogwarts. Trust me. Humph. Trust you after what happened too. Never mind. Augusta seemed like she wanted to say something more but kept it to herself.
Ep2.
Halloween night. The great hall was filled with people celebrating the feast, all eating, drinking and laughing, for this was a joyous night for most. Harry was slowly picking at his food with conflicted feelings. He has always hated Halloween. It was the night his parents had been murdered, and if that was not reason enough, something bad tended to happen always, on this night, as if a curse had been placed over this particular festivity. But now things were different. Both his parents were alive and he even had 2 younger sisters. He did not feel sad or lonely, and that made him feel guilty. Was he being disrespectful to his original parents, the ones who gave up their lives for him if he enjoyed his time with his new family? They were the same persons, or at least different versions of the same persons after all. He was not sure and could only hope that time will help in that matter. But now he had another concern. His eyes moved to the right and focused on the entrance doors of the great halls. They had been shut tight before the feast started, but Harry noticed that there was one person missing. He now looked at the teacher's table as if to confirm it, but there were no doubts about it. The new defense professor, Keshavnaya, was missing from the party. This was a familiar situation, and for a moment Harry wondered if the professor was about to stumble into the great hall while yelling about trolls wandering the dungeon. No. That's a stupid thought. This is not even the same professor. He looks so sad. The voice of Hermione reached his ears. Harry did not need to ask who she was talking about, as this was the 3rd time she made the same comment tonight. He looked at Neville. The boy was looking down and did not even touch his place. He was indeed looking sad. That was not really surprising. After the infamous game, most of the Gryffindor house had turned against him in ways that Harry was very familiar with, as it had happened to him several times. On the bright side, there were even more people now who believed that Neville had some incredible magical powers hidden inside him after the wind spell that saved his life. That may be the reason why his punishment has been limited to verbal slurs and no one has tried to raise their wand against him, lest his magic acts on its own to defend him and they find themselves plastered against one of the many walls of the castle. Even Malfoy had not dared to do much, other than some very unimaginative taunts here and there. But Harry knew that there was one thing more important on Neville's mind at the moment. Like in his own past, today was the anniversary of his parents' deaths. Is like the same story but with a different main character, Harry thought. In the end, Professor Naya never appeared. The doors were not opened by anyone calling for some emergency, and the party ended with no issues. Something that Harry was not accustomed to. He even allowed himself the thought that he may experience an entire school year at Hogwarts with no serious incidents, other than Neville almost dying twice, but that could still count as a normal year. A strong wave of cold wind hit Harry in the face as he was ascending the stairs, and he decided to cast a warming charm on himself. Much better, he said with relief. It was still early in the morning, so he was not expecting to find anyone in the Owl Tower. There you go. I got you some bacon. Harry heard a boy speaking before he passed by the doorframe. His eyes opened wide when he saw it. Neville was sitting on a wooden bench, feeding a pure white owl. Hedwig. That's a beautiful owl. Neville was startled by the sudden appearance of someone else. Like Harry, he was not expecting to find anyone else this early in the morning after last night's party. Harry? Sorry for startling you. He apologized. It's okay. I was just a bit distracted. Neville gave her another treat and the owl happily ate it. What's her name? Harry said while pointing at the owl. You can tell is female. Neville looked at them with a hint of admiration. I couldn't tell at all when I first bought her. But then I tried to name her Trevor and the owl had pinched his hand. She reacted like that. Trevor? Wasn't that the name of his frog or something? He seems to recall. Yes. That was the name of my frog. Neville made a sad expression. What happened to him? Neville sighed. It was last year when I had finally convinced my gran to take me to Diagon Alley to buy some plants. The truth is I just wanted to go out for a bit, you see. My family doesn't let me go out very often. They say, "Is not safe." It really isn't safe. Harry agreed. Anyways, we were at this shop and someone recognized me for my scar. That person started to scream my name and just a few minutes later, I was surrounded by people all talking to me at the same time while my gran was yelling at them to leave. He looked down at his hands. I had Trevor on my hands, but he must have gotten nervous with all the noise because he jumped out and landed on the floor. The people at the shop did not seem to realize and they kept trying to get closer to me. I tried to tell them to be careful, that my frog was on the floor, but they didn't seem to hear me and just keep asking questions. Before I could do anything, someone stepped on Trevor. I yelled at them to stop, but they were all yelling and pushing at each other, and kept stepping on him. Poor Trevor, I could not save him. Wow. Sorry, Nev. Harry placed a hand on his shoulder. Thanks. I wasn't allowed back on Diagon Alley after that. Not until it was time to get my wand. So in the end, what did you call her? Harry looked at the owl. Neville smiled. I was first going to call her Petunia. Harry gasped. The flowers come in different colors, but the white ones are my favorite ones. She didn't like that name either for some reason, Neville said while looking at the old. In the end I went with Snow. Is boring, I know, but she seems to like it at least. Neville petted the owl and this one gave a happy noise. Thank Merlin. Harry felt a great relief wash over him. December 20, King's Cross Station. Harry was one of the first students to leave the train, and was promptly assaulted by something small that latched onto his leg. Harry, the little girl called him with joy. He looked down at the image of his little sister and could not help but smile. Harry got down on one knee and hugged her. Hello Holly, how have you been? It was boring, she pouted. Dad is always working and Mum never takes me anywhere. Only Lyra gets to go to her friend's house. Is not fair. I see. He did not expect this little girl to have so many complaints. He then saw his mother running towards them. Holly, what did I tell you about running off like that? But Mum, I haven't seen brother in so long, Holly answered. Well, talk about this later. Lily's eyes moved to Harry and her expression brightened. She quickly went to give him a warm hug. Welcome back, dear. How was your time at Hogwarts? I want to hear every detail. Oh, but you must be tired after the long trip on the train. Let's get you home first. Home, huh? He was still getting used to this new life and the sensation of actually having a home, something he never had the chance to experience for long. Okay, you two, hold on tight to me, and don't let go. Both Harry and Holly did as told, and Lily lifted her wand in the air. A moment later the trio disappeared from the busy station. When Harry opened his eyes he found himself at the entrance of the Potter Manor. Welcome! The family house elf Mipsy greeted them. Let me help you with that bag, Master Harry. The elf used her magic to levitate his small briefcase and carried it inside. I'm home, said Harry, mostly to himself. Neat and After taking a relaxing bath and changing clothes, the sky outside was starting to darken. He opened the door to the kitchen and found his mother inside preparing some food. While Holly read a book on the kitchen table, he looked around before sitting down at the table. Lily noticed this and answered his unasked question. Your dad is at work. He should be here in an hour. And your sister is staying at one of her friends' home. She will be here tomorrow. A friend's home? Is the Weasleys. He recalled that his sister was friends with Ginny, even though the Weasleys were not that close to the Potters, especially after they left the Order of the Phoenix. At least he had never heard of them hanging out with Molly and Arthur. No, she has been staying with the Greengrass for a few days. The Greengrass. He raised an eyebrow.
That right?
That's why I recalled them mentioning that family name before I went to Hogwarts. Lyra must be friends with Daphne's sister. How did that happen? He decided to ask. Lily looked a bit surprised at him showing interest in his sister's friends. Well, last year, Lady Greengrass and I met at a ministry party. She had brought her 2 daughters and I brought only Lyra, because you didn't want to come and Holly was too little for such an event. She got along with the youngest and they talked for hours. They have been quite close since and often send letters to each other. But this is the first time she has stayed at their house. How so? With flu powder. It only takes a moment to visit. Harry asked. But he had already a few ideas. Well, Astoria has some special circumstances that don't permit her to leave the house. And your father was not thrilled to allow Lyra to visit the Greengrass house until he knew them better, explained Lily. Because they are a neutral family. Lily looked genuinely surprised this time. Have you remembered some of the politics classes your father gave you? You never showed any interest in those. Harry shrugged. Not really interested in politics, but it doesn't hurt to know those things. After all, their family had been personally involved in the last war, so there was no way for them to remain unattached from the magical Britain political scene. I'm bored. Harry, play with me, Holly complained loudly. You are bored, huh? He looked at the book she was reading. It was one of Neville's fantastical adventures which reminded him of something. You know, I have brought with me a nice gift for my sister. Her eyes opened like plates. A gift? What is it? Can I have it? He smiled. You'll have to wait until Christmas for that. No, I want it now, Holly exclaimed. Okay, maybe it was a mistake to mention that. Lesson learned. Harry considered. Where did you get a gift from? Lily asked with suspicion, since first-year students are not allowed to leave the grounds. You'll have to wait too, he said. Macmentin were basically his parents' work. A bit later, James Potter got home from work and welcomed Harry back. I heard of what happened during the Quidditch game before Halloween. What a shame, James spoke. They haven't been able to play again without a seeker and had to forfeit the next game after that, explained Harry. I don't think they have a chance to win the Quidditch Cup at this point, James lamented. I don't know why you care so much about school Quidditch, to be honest. Lily commented. But is our house? I will always care for Gryffindor and its Quidditch team. As a former player, can't help it. James gave Harry a look. They should have chosen Harry to be the seeker. James, he is still a first year. Quidditch can be dangerous. Look what happened to poor Neville. Lily pointed out. Oh well. There is always next year. Oh, Harry, James called his name. Yes? There is something we need to talk about. Come to my studio after dinner. Sure. Harry wondered what it was about. He was sure it wasn't about his grades. He had made sure to keep them above average. It must be about that. James and Harry went to his studio after dinner was over, leaving behind a very curious Holly. His father took a seat on a comfortable-looking leather chair behind a large desk, and indicated for Harry to sit down on the opposite side. His expression looked serious, but Harry noticed a hint of amusement hidden in there. Do you know why I called you here? James asked. There is only one reason that I can think of. Oh, you do? And do to tell me. What is this reason? A sneaky smile appeared on his father's face. You must have received a letter from Lord Greengrass about a potential alliance between our families, answered Harry. James grinned. Yes, he told me that you and his eldest daughter talked about this matter in Hogwarts. You don't waste time, do you, son? Harry raised an eyebrow, not liking what his father was implying. I merely suggested for Lord Greengrass to contact you for a meeting if they wanted to discuss something like a formal alliance. After all, neither Daphne nor I have that kind of authority. Was it the wrong thing to do? No, it wasn't necessarily wrong. But I think that you should understand a bit more about the political factions of magical Britain. For the last centuries, there has been a strong division among the pure-blood families. James said, even before Grindelwald, he never had the chance to learn much about the political environment of the country before everything went awry. So there were many things he didn't know. Yes, Dark Lords like Grindelwald or Voldemort just took advantage of a problem that already existed and used it for their own purposes. The two current factions are most commonly known as the Progressives, led by Albus Dumbledore, and the Traditionalists, led by Lucius Malfoy, at least officially. Harry took note of that last part. The second faction was definitely led by Voldemort, but since he is still considered a criminal, Lucius is the official face of the group. These two factions have been bickering with each other about many different topics they disagree on, but the most common thing is laws that affect Muggles and Muggle-borns. One side wants to make our world more accessible, while the other one wants to keep anyone who is not a pure-blood wizard or witch out of our culture. But there are some families who prefer not to choose a side and remain neutral, Harry added. James nodded in approval. Very well, yes. Families like the Greengrass among others. They decided to avoid permanently joining any side so they could pick and choose whatever was more convenient to them or what policy benefited them the most. As you can imagine, this kind of attitude did not make them very popular by either side, but if the family is powerful and influential enough, they can get away with it. Daphne told me her family is now suffering a lot of pressure from the more traditional families, said Harry. Yes, and it seems like Lord Greengrass has made his choice on who he wants to ally with, admitted James. This must be the reason he finally let Lyra go to their house. He must have gotten some reassurance from Lord Greengrass. Harry considered. So do you know what he's going to suggest in order to secure this alliance? His father asked. Harry nodded. Daphne had made it very clear. And what do you think about that? James asked. I don't think Mum would be pleased if I got married before finishing my first year of school, Harry delivered with a deadpan expression. James started to laugh. I bet she would not be amused at all. No, but this would only be an engagement. No one gets married this early in life. You can think of it as a long-term promise. The marriage itself would only take place after you are both adults. She told me that these types of deals are common among pure-blood families, said Harry. Among some of them, the Potters have not done something like a forced marriage contract since the times of my grandfather. My parents married because they fell in love during their Hogwarts years. And I did the same with your mother. So even if Lord Greengrass suggests something like this, I would never agree to it, and neither will your mother. Lord Greengrass would not be pleased. He may refuse an alliance with us and go join with another family. Harry considered. There are other ways to secure an alliance, and I am sure the Lord is aware of that. Of course, a marriage gives the strongest bond between two families. I already have an idea of what to suggest to him, so don't worry. If you like this girl, you can court her in a few years. James gave Harry a playful wink. Harry made a surprised expression. Like her, is that what he thought was going on? Leaving aside the fact that she was just a child, Harry didn't have a chance yet to consider matters like love. He has only been in love one time during his previous life. After he lost his wife, Ginny, he never had time for things like that again. Always fighting, always trying to find ways to kill his enemies in more efficient ways, or trying to just survive one more day. He hasn't even taken the time to think about the moral dilemma that would be to date anyone in this alternate reality. Even if he ignores the age difference when it comes to mental maturity, this entire world still feels somewhat surreal to him, and being together with someone here would feel like he is replacing someone he knew for a copy of that person. The mental image of an adult Ginny appeared at the front of his mind, and Harry shook the thought away. It is easier to form genuine connections with people he never knew in his past, like his parents or sisters, since everything is new to him, but for those like Hermione, Ron, or Ginny, it will take more time until they stop feeling like copies of people he once knew. James was looking at his son, who seemed to be in deep introspection, and he concluded that his son was nervous about the Greengrass girl. Son, don't you worry. He gave Harry a thumbs up. Potters always get the girl they want in the end. Harry tilted his head to the side in confusion. Huh? On the next day, Lyra came back home, accompanied by Lord Greengrass and Daphne. After exchanging the formal pleasantries expected from the situation and nothing more than that, the parents moved the conversation to the privacy of James's studio, where he had been talking with Harry the day before. The room was big enough to comfortably fit 10 people, so it was not a problem for the current meeting. Lord Greengrass and his daughter sat on one of the couches while the Potters sat on another one that was placed on the opposite side. Lord Greengrass pulled a piece of parchment from inside his robe and placed it on the short table that was between the two families. He then proceeded to take out a small box that, when opened, revealed a very expensive-looking quill. Harry knew there was something special about that parchment, since it had a great number of runes he recognized, but he could only guess the function of the complete array, as that would require a closer and more lengthy examination. For the quill, however, he did not even need a second to identify it. He became very familiar with that particular type of quill during his 5th year at Hogwarts. And judging from his mother's expression, she also knew what it was. A blood quill? What did you bring that for? Lily raised her voice more than she had intended, making Lord Greengrass's expression change momentarily to a light frown. Calm down, Lily. Blood quills are commonly used to sign important magical contracts. James tried to explain to his wife. Indeed, as Lord Potter said, blood quills are a necessity for this type of contract. Blood is the most efficient way to ensure a deal, as that is the source of our magic. Lord Greengrass spoke with a grave voice. Lily observed the parchment with interest. What kind of contract is this? I never seen protections like these ones in a contract, and some of the runes are of globling origin. That's because this contract was made by Gringotts goblins. Once the contents are written and signed with blood, the contract becomes unbreakable and is also enforced by the goblin nation. Is the most secure type of document that money can buy, explained Lord Greengrass. Daphne listened to her father talk with a prideful expression. Impressive. Now all that is left is to discuss the contents of such a contract. Why don't we start with what do you expect to get, Lord Greengrass? James looked at the other lord. Lord Greengrass moved his long blonde hair out of his face and observed James for a moment before speaking. What I want is very simple. Protection for my family, you know from who. Once he realizes our refuse to join his side, he and his followers will show us no mercy. You don't need a contract for that. Of course we will help your family, exclaimed Lily. Lord Greengrass gave her a stern look. And I am meant to trust the future of my family and house on your word, Lady Potter? No offense, but old magical families like ours do things differently. Father Daphne warned. I hope you are not suggesting that my wife is not to be trusted, because she is a Muggle-born. James had a hard expression on his face as he said those words. Lord Greengrass did not seem to mind. Do not twist my words, Lord Potter. I don't share those silly beliefs that some of my fellow lords and ladies like to speak so much about. He looked at Lily. Lady Potter, when it comes to the safety of my family, words are not enough. Not from you, your husband, or anyone else, regardless of their blood status or political position. Lily made an expression of disapproval. While I can agree with some of that, being distrustful of everyone is not a healthy attitude. It has maintained our legacy for many centuries while other old families have disappeared over time, rebuked Lord Greengrass. Now let's get back to the matter in question. To cement this alliance between our families, I propose making a marriage contract between our heirs. Yes, I thought you were going to propose that. James looked at his wife with a troubled face. Is there a problem, Lord Potter? Lord Greengrass frowned. Let me make it very clear that we are not looking down on your proposal. Uniting our two families with a marriage would certainly be a welcome thing, said James. However, asked Lord Greengrass. However, our children are still too young for such compromises, said Lily. Of course they are, clamored Lord Greengrass. That's why we the adults must make those decisions for them. James saw that his wife looked ready to explode into a rant about how outdated that custom was, so he decided to speak first while firmly holding her hand as a sign of let me do the talking. Yes, that has been a tradition between pure-blood families since before Hogwarts was funded. I am aware of that, but the Potters had stopped doing contracted marriages since the times of my father. Your father married the sister of the former Lord Black, a very prestigious family, back then at least, Lord Greengrass pointed out. He did, but only because they both fell in love with each other. In fact, the Blacks were not happy with marriage at all. According to what my mother told me, they almost banished her from the family for it, explained James. I see, I did not know that. But where are you getting with this? Asked the Lord. What I'm trying to say is that I want my children to have a choice, like my father did, and like I did. James looked at his wife with a warm smile. I want them to be happy and marry someone they truly want to spend the rest of their lives with. I will not take that choice from them. Choosing who to marry without taking into account what benefits it could bring to your family. Daphne looked at the Potters with a complicated expression. That seems very selfish to me. So I am to understand that a marriage contract is out of the table then. What do you propose then, Lord Potter? Lord Greengrass looked at James. James returned the look. I wouldn't say is out of the table yet, but I discussed this with my wife and we have an idea that could work for everyone. 24 December. The Potters were sitting at the table and enjoying their Christmas dinner while chatting. Harry looked over at his new family and smiled. This was a scene he had dreamed about many times during his lonely childhood years. Just having a family and spending time with them, he had wanted that for so long, and now that he has it, he was willing to do anything to protect it. Lily looked at her son with her bright green eyes. Harry, dear, is everything okay? You have been very quiet. He nodded at his mother. Everything is great, Mom. I was just thinking about some stuff. Were you perhaps thinking about how many classes are you going to fail in your first year? Said Lyra with a mischievous smile. Lyra, don't say those things. Harry is not going to fail any classes. You are studying properly, right, son? Asked James. Of course, Dad. I'm doing fine at school. He made sure to not stand up too much during his classes, but he wasn't going to fail either. All of his grades were at least decent, even in potions, much to the professor's displeasure. What about potions? It was like his father had just read his mind. Snivelus is not giving you trouble, I hope, or else I will have James, you have to stop calling him that, even more so in front of the children. That being said, Lily's eyes turned to look at Harry. Is he giving you a hard time? You can tell me if he does. He is a tough teacher, but I don't think he is harsher with me than with the rest of the students. Harry decided to lie a bit. He didn't want his parents to go complain to Snape. That would just make things worse. He already knew the man quite well. Lily looked slightly upset. He shouldn't be tough with his students at all, and especially with the first years. The process of potion making is very delicate, and being able to keep calm is extremely important for good results. Severus was always strict with himself when we were students. He was the type of person who would not tolerate even a small mistake, if he is putting his students to the same standard. Or maybe he is just a twat, added James. James, language. Lily spoke with rising fury. Was this professor a friend of yours, Mum? Asked Lyra, who had been wanting to get into the conversation for a while. Lily calmed herself down and addressed her daughter. We grew up in the same neighborhood, and attended Hogwarts together, but we were sorted into different houses and talked less and less over the years. Eventually we had a big disagreement, and we haven't really talked after our graduation. Can we talk about something happier than that, gloomy man? I mean, it's almost Christmas already. James pointed at the clock hanging from the wall. The needles were only 10 minutes away from midnight. We have presents to open. The mere mention of the word presents seemed to have awakened Holly from her slumbering state. Presents? Yes, she started to yell. The family moved to the main living room of the house, where the presents had been stored under a big tree. The room had been decorated by Lily and Mipsy, and it even had fake magical snow falling from a cloud that was moving around the place. Holly did not care much about all of this, and just sprinted towards the tree. Presents. Holly, wait, don't open them yet. Lily ran after her daughter. Lyra pretended to be more composed, but she walked relatively fast towards the tree and started to look for the boxes with her name on them. Harry felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up to his father. Go on, son. I think there are a few with your name. James gave Harry a wink and tapped him on the back. He felt a bit awkward by celebrating the holidays in such a manner. It reminded him of the ones he spent with the Weasleys, but he never grew a costume to them, always feeling like a bit of an outcast in them. This was supposed to be his real family, but he could not help but still feel like that. Pushing the negative thought aside, Harry found 2 boxes with his name written on it. His 2 sisters were already busy opening their presents, so he decided to do the same. Inside the small box were 2 books. One looked new while the other one was a fairly worn-out notebook. This is... Oh, that's mine, said his mother as she moved to his side. The cover of the new book said 100 Tips and Tricks for Young Potioners. That book contains a lot of incredible useful information to make your potion class much easier. I always lamented that I only found out about that one when I was in my 4th year, so I told myself that I would get one for my children when they were old enough. She pointed at the other one. I figured that Severus could give you a hard time. That notebook is from my own first 3 years. It has a lot of useful guidance on how to perform the potions from Hogwarts curriculum. It was written by both me and Severus, but don't let him see it. He may get mad. Harry opened the notebook. It was filled with notes handwritten by his mother. I would have given anything to have a memento like this in the past. Lily gave him an apologetic smile. I know that books are not a great present for children, so I put a lot of candy at the bottom of the box. No, this is great, thank you, Mom. Harry smiled softly, doing his best to contain his emotions. Open mine now, come on. James approached them. You are going to love it. Harry nodded and opened the box. There was some sort of clothes inside. No, these are not clothes. This is. James, is that what I think it is? Questioned Lily. Hee! This is my good old cloak of invisibility, James proclaimed proudly. January. Harry was somewhat glad to be back at the castle. It wasn't that he didn't enjoy spending time with his family, but he felt more restricted at this house. Here in Hogwarts he had access to several hidden places like the Room of Requirements, where he didn't have to worry about being seen by the students or teachers. But at home it was a different story. The house was quite big, but it didn't have any places where he could do magic without taking the risk of being found out by his family or their house elf. He hated the fact that he could not be himself in front of his own family, but revealing the truth was not an option he could take right now. Even if he could somehow convince them he was telling the truth, he would be placing a heavy burden on them. But more than that, it scared him. He has no idea how would they react after learning that their real son is actually dead, and instead they have been living with some alternate version copy of him. Harry, the voice of Hermione shook him from his negative thoughts. He lifted his head to look at her. Finally, she huffed with annoyance. You know, sometimes you seem to get very lost in your own world. What were you thinking so hard about? Yes, I'm afraid that is a quirk shared among geniuses, he joked. Hermione rolled her eyes. Sure. So, wanna go to the library? The library already? We just got back and we don't have any pending homework, and there will be no tests for at least 2 more weeks. Harry looked around the common room. Classes were over for the day, but the students still had several hours before dinner, so most of them would be hanging around in different parts of the castle, leaving the common room almost empty at this time of the day. Other than him and Hermione, the only occupants at the moment were Lavender and Parvati, who seemed to be having an intense conversation on a couch close to the fireplace. Hermione made a troubled expression. I know, but there isn't much to do now. Ah, I see. He now realized the problem. She was bored. For him, being alone was not much of an issue. Despite having many companions and comrades during the war, he would often travel alone for long periods of time, and now, leaving aside the fact that he did not enjoy interacting with children that much, he had much to do, making it impossible for him to get bored. But for Hermione was different. Her personality made it difficult to make friends of her age. The only one who gave her any attention was Harry, but he wasn't great for company as he spent most of his free time training at the Room of Requirements. What she needs right now more than books are some friends. But she doesn't get along with either Ron or Dean, making it very difficult for her to interact with Neville. Harry looked back at the 2 girls on the couch. I guess it wouldn't hurt to try. You are roommates with those 2, right? He asked. Hermione turned around to observe the girls for a moment before nodding. Why? She asked. Do you talk with them often? Well, we sleep in the same bedroom, but don't talk much. On the first day I tried to tell them all I had learned about the castle in Hogwarts. A history, but they didn't seem very interested. They also don't seem very interested in any of our classes, so I gave up on interacting with them. Harry wanted to smack her forehead. Most first years aren't that invested in academics or the history of an old castle, even a magical one. Did you ask them about their own interests? Hermione tilted her head in confusion. No, where would I do that? Because that's how you make friends. You get to know the other person, and try to find something in common that you both enjoy. I don't think we have anything in common, and they don't seem very interesting. All they talk about is makeup and boys, she huffed. I'm sure they know something that can interest you, like. Harry tried to remember any useful about those 2. He didn't talk much to them, and Lavender died during their last year of school. But there were a few things he recalled. Well, they are both from pure-blood families, and Parvati family. The Patil is an extremely old pure-blood family from India. Imagine the long story of magic they have. And their library. Hermione's eyes illuminated a bit at hearing this. You grew up in the Muggle world. I'm sure there are many things you could learn from them about being a witch that you cannot learn from books, explained Harry. Don't look down on books, Hermione rebuked. But you may be right, Maybe learning more about witches from magical families would not be bad. But how do I approach them? Maybe there is a book about this in the library. I'll check tomorrow. There is no need for that. Come. He held her by the hand and brought her alone as he approached the two girls. Hello, Hartiel Brown. Have you two heard the rumor about Professor Snape? He asked. Rumor? What rumor? The two of them perked up and looked at him. If it is the one about him being able to turn into a bat, I already heard it and I don't think is true, added Lavender. No, this is something else. I heard that Snape uses a charm that he personally created to make his robes flow in that weird way. Harry was about 80% sure this was a true fact. Really? A charm? That would make sense. There is no way a normal robe should move like that. I always thought it was strange. The two of them commented. Do you two mind if we sit here? It's a bit cold in that corner, said Harry. Sure, come sit here. Both girls made room for Harry and Hermione to sit down next to the fireplace. After that, the group talked for a long while until it was time for dinner. Harry could only hope that Hermione would take this chance to create some new friends. It was the least he could do for her. Okay, this should do it for now. Harry inspected the briefcase one last time before closing it. The magical container has been filled with all the valuables he was able to find during his 2-month search. He knew he had only scratched the surface of what was stored inside the room of requirements, but that was fine by him. It's not like he was planning on becoming rich by selling antiques. He only intended to get enough money to buy the materials he required at the moment. He was not a greedy person by any means. Harry left the briefcase and looked at his mechanical wristwatch. 8 o'clock. Perfect. The shops at the alley must be opening right now, and since today is Saturday I can spend most of the day away without raising suspicions. He then walked to an old full-size mirror that was left in a corner of the room of requirements. With a wave of his wand, the mirror became sparkling clean. Harry looked at his reflection with care. He had to make sure there were no glaring errors in his disguise. He tried to make the minimum amount of changes, since the more you change yourself, the easier becomes for others to discern that something was wrong. His hair remained the same. His eyes had only changed color to a light brown tone. He was also wearing different glasses and some muggle clothes he had brought to the school. The biggest change was his face. He had used a mixture of charms and transfiguration to make himself look around 10 years older. Unfortunately, his height remained the same since there was no way to change his size without resorting to illusions or complex potions he did not have access to. So ended up looking like a very short young man, in his early 20s. I don't think the shop owner will care that much even if he notices something. Satisfied with the changes, Harry went to pick up his briefcase and took his wand out. With a smooth flick he disappeared from the room of requirements without a trace, and not even Dumbledore would notice his absence. Night 2. With a pop noise, Harry appeared in a desolated corner of Diagon Alley. After making sure that no one was around, he pulled out his invisibility cloak and covered himself with it. He had originally planned to go to a different shop, one that was located close to the main street. But now that he had his cloak back, he could sneak into Nocturne Alley, without gathering unwanted attention. As expected, Borgin and Burke's were empty at this time of the day as the usual clients prefer to go out at night. After checking his surroundings, Harry removed himself from underneath the cloak, and entered the shop. The ring of the door startled the shopkeeper from his drowsy state.
"Oh, client this early in the morning?"
That's quite a surprise. Oh? Mr. Burks looked at the small frame of Harry with interest as he entered. Shouldn't you be in Hogwarts, child? Are you perhaps lost? He said with a teasing tone. Harry's eyes moved to meet his and Burks felt a great deal of anger and hatred in them. That was not a rare thing for his average client, but not something he expected from an individual he believed to be a child. I graduated 5 years ago and I'm not a child, Harry said with a frown that twisted his face, enhancing his more mature features. Or are you making fun of me for my condition? Burke realized his mistake after seeing the face more closely. That was not the face of a child. My apologies, good sir. I meant no insult, he hurried up to say. It's just very early in the morning and I had a long night. Please forgive this old fool. No matter, I came here to do business. Harry walked to the counter. Of course. How can I help you? Burke asked with a polite smile. With some difficulty, Harry placed the briefcase on top of the counter and opened it. Burks looked over with interest. "May I?" he asked for permission, and Harry nodded. Only then did the old man start to pick up the objects inside the case and carefully place them on the counter one by one, while taking long glances at each piece before putting them down. "That is quite the collection of antique objects you have here. Many old books, some of them very valuable, jewelry, and some very fascinating quills. I also have this." Harry took a thin stick out of one of his jacket pockets and removed the shrinking charm he had placed on it. The stick turned into a full-size broom and was also placed on the counter. "A Nimbus 100, that's quite the find. The collectors of flying brooms go crazy for these old models," said Burks. He then gave Harry a measuring look. "I don't mean to be impolite, but I am required to ask, if I may, where did you find all of these things?" Harry was already expecting this question. "My uncle had recently passed away and left me his house as an inheritance. I found this thing while browsing around the house. It's a very old house, you see." "Oh, I understand. I'm very sorry for your loss, but when we lose something we often gain something else in exchange, don't we?" It was obvious that Burks did not believe a word that Harry said, but the man did not really care if the merchandise was stolen. "So are you interested in buying?" asked Harry. "Of course, let me see." The old man pretended to think for a minute despite already knowing the value of most of the objects he had seen. "What about 10,000 gallons?" Harry frowned. He was no expert in books or jewels, but he knew the broom alone should be worth around that much. "This old goat is trying to scam me." After 10 long minutes of back and forth, Harry managed to get a deal for 50,000 gallons. "Here." He passed Burke a small piece of paper. "This is?" The old man picked up the paper and read it. "A list of things. There are several types of items listed in the paper. A variety of precious metals and stones, a new set of runic inscription tools, dragonhide and small arkstones." "Small arkstones? How small are we talking?" "For the warding of a property, the smallest one recommended is 4 inches, asked the old man. "Around half an inch in diameter," explained Harry. "One that's small would be considered scraps. No one uses them." "What would you want something that small for?" asked Burks. "It doesn't matter what I want them for. Can you get them for me? I may know a provider, but it won't be cheap." "You just said they were just scraps," Harry reminded him. The old man chuckled. "Yes, but you need to know an arkstone craftsman to acquire them. Now let's talk about the price for this list of yours." They then discussed for almost an hour until an agreement was reached. Harry will get all the items on his list plus 10,000 galleons in exchange for the antiques. This meant that he would not have enough for the alchemic ingredients he was planning on buying later on, but there was still a lot of time to get those, so he didn't complain. "Come back in 2 weeks and I will have everything ready," told Burks to Harry before he left the shop. It was almost midday when he stepped outside, but he felt more tired than after training for hours. "Let's get back to Hogwarts and take a nap." "Leonai, there you are." Harry was on his way to the kitchens when someone called for him. "Where have you been all day? I have been looking for you," Daphne told him while she kept turning her head back like she was making sure no one was behind them. "I was busy with some things and I thought we weren't supposed to interact much in public," said Harry. "We are not, but there is something important." Daphne kept looking around. "Fine." Harry took out his invisibility cloak, got close to Daphne, and wrapped them both underneath. Is this an invisibility cloak?" Her anger at his sudden physical closeness faded quickly. "Stay quiet. The cloak doesn't block sound," Harry whispered. She looked displeased but chose to comply and remained quiet all the way to the room that seemed to have become their private meeting location. "Maybe we should give this room a name, after all. We keep coming back here." Harry removed the cloak after the door was closed. "Meeting room, that should do it," suggested Daphne. "So imaginative." "Sure, meeting room. What was that important thing that could not wait until tomorrow?" Harry sat down on one of the couches. "I had a long day." "Stop talking like an old man. This could not wait any longer, is too big," Daphne said with a rare show of emotion. "Okay, I'm listening." "Professor Nair is an assassin," she said with no hesitation.
"What?"
"But he is one of the best teachers that hold on." Harry took a pause to think about it for a bit. When did Hogwarts have a good teacher who didn't try to kill a student by the end of the year? He looked at Daphne. Fine, he is an assassin. Anything else? You have accepted this surprisingly quickly. Daphne looked a bit taken aback. Yes, well, some things just make sense, I guess. Who is the target? Take a guess, she said with her arms crossed. It must be the Weasley twins then. They must have pranked the wrong person this time, and then, is Longbottom, cried Daphne. Of course he is. Harry rolled his eyes. You asked, but the Weasley twins was not a bad guess. I have heard about some of the pranks they have pulled on my housemates, and let me tell you, they are not happy. How did your father find out about this? Asked Harry. He didn't tell me all the details, just that Malfoy is not as secretive as he thinks. Anything else? Like when is the attack going to happen, where or how? Before the end of the year, that's all I know. You are going to inform your father about this, correct? Harry remained silent for a minute, considering the information he had received. No, there is no need to involve my father in this. Yet, how come? Isn't he an Auror? Surely there is something he could do. Daphne could not understand his motives. As you said, he is an Auror. They need solid evidence to take action in cases like this. The only thing we have is some rumors, isn't it? Harry remained impassive. But then, are you going to ignore it? Daphne asked with disbelief. Of course not. Give me some time to think about this. Maybe there is a way to gain some evidence, then we can call my father, offered Harry. What if he attacks before that? She asked. Unlikely. Killing the boy who lived while in Hogwarts would definitely attract the attention of every Auror in England. The ministry will not rest until an arrest has been made because the public will pressure him to do that. If Professor Naya commits the crime now, he will be forced to leave the country immediately, revealing his involvement in the matter. It would be better to wait until the end of the year, maybe even the last day. If he does it correctly and hides the evidence, by the time the Aurors find the body, all the teachers and students would have already left the school, making it incredibly difficult for the Aurors to even perform an investigation. Daphne did not know what to say to that. You really thought about this a lot. Were you planning on cave? Don't be silly, Daphne. Harry interrupted her. Now let us go back to our respective rooms. I'm very tired. Tired from doing what? Is Saturday? She inquired. Harry merely gave her a cryptic smile in answer, much to the girl's frustration. During the next defense class, Harry was staring at the professor while thinking about how to solve this issue. Even though he had assured Daphne that the crime would certainly not take place until the end of the year, he wasn't 100% confident about that, and he rather not gamble with Neville's life like that. Should I just kill him at the first chance I get, or maybe try to gain more information about his plans, or on what the Death Eaters are doing? No, this man is just a hired wand. There is zero chance he knows something important. He held his head in frustration. I hate this kind of stuff. Let's see. What did Moody use to say? Always know your enemy or something like that. Maybe I can buy some information on Mr. Potter. He must have been more distracted than he thought because he failed to notice Professor Naya arriving at his side. Mr. Potter, are you perhaps feeling unwell? You seem paler than usual, asked the professor. Harry quickly brushed aside his concern, claiming a mild headache from too much reading, and the professor continued with his class. Instead, the head of the training dummy was crushed by a stone that impacted the speed of a bullet. 3 more dummies moved around the room in irregular patterns. Harry conjured some small knives before casting a banishing charm. Depulso, the blades, one of the dummies on the head and another one on the chest, missing the third target. Harry made a sound of annoyance. Fullman. A lightning bolt came out of his wand and turned the poor dummy into a burning mess. He was huffing and puffing by the end of the training, but he was feeling better. This is it. Blowing up stuff never fails to cheer me up. He exited the room of requirements at his usual time, 1 hour before dinner. This gives him enough room to take a shower and rest for a bit before leaving. Hogsnout. The fat lady nodded and the entrance to the dorms opened just in time for Harry to see Hermione, Parvati and Lavender leaving the common room. Oh, Harry, hello, greeted Hermione. He was glad to see her getting along with the other girls. That way he would not feel bad for letting her alone in order to do other things that he considered more important at the moment. Hello, Hermione. He looked at the other two girls and nodded at them. Pravati, Lavender, hello to you two too. Lavender rolled her eyes. You don't have to be so formal all the time, Harry. We are classmates for Pete's sake. Lavender huffed. She is right, you know, added Pravati. We are going for a walk through the inner garden before dinner. Would you like to come with us? And I am the one being overly polite, Harry grumbled. Hermione and Lavender chuckled. He is right, you are always so posh, said Lavender. I can't help it, I was raised like that. Besides, my sister Padma is much worse than me. Parvati excused herself the best she could. Well, I appreciate the offer, but I'm in dire need of a shower at the moment. Harry removed some beads of sweat that were traveling across his forehead. Have you been running or something? Asked Lavender. Something like that, Harry answered dismissively. That's not a very wizard-like behavior, Parvati commented. But I am a very unusual wizard, Harry pointed out. Is that what you are always doing after class? You are always disappearing to go somewhere, but never tell me where. You even skipped several library sessions. Hermione looked particularly miffed about that last part. Ep2, something has been bugging him since he left the dorms. A bad feeling, a uniqueness that turned his stomach and made him uncomfortable. He had always listened to his gut feelings when these warned him of some danger, but he had no idea what danger must he prepare against. Harry entered the Great Hall at a brisk pace and moved his eyes around the room, trying to gain as much information as possible. He took notice of the teacher's table, all there, including the defense professor, who was already eating in a relaxed manner. On the Slytherin table he spotted Draco, smiling smugly while talking about something with his classmates. On the Gryffindor table he first saw Hermione, Lavender, and Parvati. The three girls were starting to place food on their plates while chatting. He moved his gaze around the long table and saw the Weasley twins. And finally, sitting nearby was the not-so-golden trio. Ron, Seamus and... Where is Neville? Shit, Harry cursed. Mr. Potter, language. Professor McGonagall gave him a stern look. He apologized and moved away from the teacher's table. Harry sat next to Ron and looked at the redhead boy. Usually Ron would be stuffing his face from his overfilled plate, so, seeing him slowly cutting a piece of chicken and barely eating any of it, was beyond weird. Something must have happened. Hey Ron, Seamus, is Neville not coming down for dinner? He tried to ask casually. Ron stopped eating and frowned. He seemed upset at the mention of Neville. Well, we haven't seen it since our last class ended, Seamus answered, and gave Ron a glance. Did you guys get into an argument or something? Asked Harry. Something like that. Seamus was carefully glancing at Ron like he was trying to avoid upsetting him by talking too much. Anyways, the professor told him to stay behind and talk about something, and we left. Wait, the last class of today was defense, Harry thought with increasing worry. His gaze went back to the teacher's table. Najjar was there, eating calmly. Could he have done something to Neville? It can't be. He wouldn't be here if he had done something. Right? Why do you care now? You never hang out with us. Ron gave Harry an angry look. Because, while he was trying to come up with something, the house ghosts came flying into the hall. Acromantulas, screamed Gryffindor's ghost. Acromantulas have invaded the castle, added the Hufflepuff one. The hall went into a panic,